Hello, and welcome to the Nice..ELAN OS Controller Network Configuration presentation. My name is Jonathan Ray, and in this video, I'm going to go over how to configure the network on a system controller. Now, very simply, when it comes to network configuration, there's two major components. There is the IP address and how your controller is interfacing with Wi-Fi. So we're going to begin in Configurator version 2. If I navigate to the System tab and then Network, we have some pretty basic options in here. Very self-explanatory, but I'm going to explain them anyway. Here we have wired and Wi-Fi. Now, under this wired, I can go ahead and see that my controller is currently on DHCP. What that means is that when my controller is coming up and trying to connect to the network after a reboot or power loss or disconnection from the network, it will request an IP address from the router. This is generally not what we want to do with a system controller because there are certain features that require the controller to have static IP address, a address that we have set manually for the controller so it can connect every time. These are our older remotes, such as the HR10, 32 and 200 require our controller to stay at a specified IP address. And also, if you are using something like a Doorbird 2-in or HoloVision door station, in those devices settings, you have to set the controller IP address. So if that changes, it'll break integration with those devices. You might ask, why wouldn't I just use a DHCP reservation on my router? Where you go into the router and then you manually set this MAC address, always pulls this IP address. The major reason for that is all of your configuration is in the router instead of your actual controller. If your router dies, you would then have to, on the controller, figure out what IP addresses went where. For example, your router dies and then you have to now go into your Doorbird app. You have to go and figure out what IP address was my controller at. Or you have to do everything from scratch with the new IP address your new router set. If everything is static, then if you put in a new router, you can just use the same IP scheme. A big thing, though, when it comes to DHCP addresses is you want on your router to have a restricted DHCP pool. A router is capable of assigning DHCP addresses, and out the box, usually that's from 2 to 254. You want to make sure that in your router settings, you have restricted that pool down so you have what's called a static range. For example, here at my office, from 2 to 99, that's my static range. And my router will not give out IP addresses to any device in that range, while my DHCP pool is 100 to 254. So any device that connects that isn't statically assigned will instead grab one of those addresses. And this is important because if you static a device in your DHCP pool, there's a possibility that on a network loss or a power loss, a device could negotiate that DHCP address before your static device comes up. And that'll give you an IP conflict, which causes all sorts of instability, connection issues, and a generally poor experience. For a system controller here, I'm going to go ahead and uncheck my DHCP. I have an IP address, subnet mask, gateway, and DNS server. IP address. That is my local IP address for this device. Right now it's 192.168.13.188. For my system, I'm going to put that to .2. For your subnet mask, in most situations, you're not going to touch this, 255, 255, 255.0. For the third octet, you could expand out your subnet mask to something like 255, 255, 254, and that would allow neighboring IPs to find each other. So, for example, if I wanted to have a wider network range with 192.168.13 and 12 here in the third octet, that would allow those devices to talk to each other and see each other. That's really only done if you have more than 254 devices on your network at any given time. Probably not going to run into it too much in a residential home unless they're very, very large, or if you're in a commercial setting. But I would definitely look into a deeper networking course for a full explanation. Your gateway is your router's IP address. This is why it's generally from .2 to 254, because your IP address of your router is generally .1. Most routers will come with that out the box. DNS server. Now this is important. The DNS server is what our controller is going to use to get to the outside network. By default, it's the IP address of your gateway, and that can work. Some of the preferred DNS servers are Cloudflare, Google, OpenDNS. Google Google is 8.8.8.8. They also have an alternative of 8.8.4.4, depending on which Google servers you're trying to connect to. Cloudflare, I've seen this around. Some dealers have had success with it, which is 1.1.1.1. That's super easy to remember. But back in the day, the main one that we used to recommend during our HC and early GSC days was OpenDNS, which is 208.67.222.222, and that one's also a good DNS. Any of these I would recommend trying before moving on to any different DNSs, because those are known good ones. The only time that you'll run into an issue that I've seen is with ISPs. Now, there are certain ISPs throughout the United States, at least, that if you don't use their DNS, they don't necessarily let you get out. One ISP that I've dealt with has a DNS server of 75, 75, 75, 75. And a quick Google search will tell you your ISP's DNS if none of the other ones are working and your system works locally but is having trouble pulling weather or being logged into remotely with the app or having issues downloading firmware for devices within the system, such as the IPD, Dante amps, or the HR40, or anything of that nature. I'm going to set mine back to Google DNS because that's usually what I prefer. Once you set an IP, you have an apply and reboot here at the bottom. That will cause the controller to reboot and use the new IP address.
Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.